You don't look like you belong here." The moment she stepped onto the jet bridge, all eyes turned. She wasn't flashy. No designer heels clicked beneath her. No diamond necklace caught the light. She wore what anyone might wear for a long flight. A soft blue hoodie, matching joggers, clean sneakers. Her hair, a gentle shade of auburn, was tucked under a plain baseball cap, and her only accessory was a weathered leather satchel hanging off one shoulder. But it wasn't her outfit that made people stare. It was that she walked toward first class. Emma Caldwell didn't blink at the sideways glances. At 32, she had grown used to being underestimated. Raised in a small Ohio town with nothing but her mother's grit and two younger brothers to look after, Emma had learned that comfort was not a priority. Survival was. That's what made this moment both strange and oddly satisfying. She had earned this seat. She had paid for this ticket. It was an early morning flight out of Lax, headed to New York. Summit Airlines Flight 407. Emma's goal was to make it to her father's gravesite before the 5th anniversary of his passing. A promise she had made quietly under her breath the day they lowered his coffin into the ground. Back then, she could barely afford a bus ride. Now she was walking into first class. Not because she craved the luxury. Not because she wanted the legroom, though she certainly wouldn't complain. She booked first class because for the first time in her life, she could afford to. And because her husband, who insisted she fly private, was away on business, and she didn't want to attract attention by using his name. Emma Caldwell. That's the name on the ticket. Not Emma Stoneworth Caldwell. And certainly not Mrs. Emma Stoneworth, wife of Dominic Stoneworth, the tech billionaire who had recently acquired Summit Airlines in a surprise business deal no one saw coming. But no one on that flight knew that. Yet. She didn't want them to. "Good morning, ma'am," the flight attendant said, plastering on a customer service smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Her name badge read Tina in shiny silver letters. "Economy is just down that way." Emma offered a soft smile. "Actually, I'm in 1C. Tina's smile faltered. "I'm sorry." "Seat 1C, first class. Window seat." The attendant blinked, her eyes darting toward Emma's hoodie, as if searching for a hidden joke. Then, after an awkward pause, she forced another smile and gestured toward the front row. "Of course. Right this way." As Emma made her way toward the seat, she could feel the eyes. A woman in a pearl-white pantsuit raised her eyebrows. A suited businessman whispered something to the man next to him. The whispers were familiar. Emma had heard them her whole life. She must be in the wrong section. Maybe she's an influencer or something. Poor girl's going to be embarrassed when they figure it out. She took her seat calmly, placing her leather satchel under the seat in front of her. Then she leaned back, eyes closed. Just breathe. But the peace didn't last. "Ma'am," Tina returned, this time accompanied by a second attendant, a tall man with salt and pepper hair, and an annoyed frown. His name badge said Craig. "Could we see your boarding pass, please?" he asked curtly. Emma blinked. Of course. She retrieved her phone and displayed the pass. Digital. Clear. Her name, her seat number, the airline logo. They stared at it. For too long. Craig looked from the screen to Emma. "Did you, perhaps, get upgraded at the gate?" "No," she said slowly. "I bought this ticket weeks ago." "Ma'am," Tina said, shifting uncomfortably. "It's just, we have very strict guidelines for first-class access. There must be a mix-up in the system. You don't. Usually passengers in this cabin." Emma tilted her head. "Yes. They usually travel differently," Craig added quickly, as if trying to clean up Tina's mess. Emma gave them a long, steady look. She recognized that tone. She knew that coded language. "You mean they dress differently?" Craig cleared his throat. "Not necessarily. Because my hoodie disqualifies me from sitting here." Tina's cheeks flushed. "That's not what we're saying." "No," Emma said evenly. "That's exactly what you're saying. You looked at me, not my boarding pass. Craig straightened. We're just trying to verify everything, ma'am. Please don't make this difficult. Emma leaned back, her tone cool. Then verify. But be quick. I have somewhere important to be. Craig took the phone and marched to the front of the cabin. Passengers now openly stared. Whispers turned to murmurs. And in the back of Emma's mind, she wondered, not for herself, but for everyone like her, how often this happened. To the tired mom who scrimped and saved for a rare luxury. To the quiet scientist in worn jeans. To anyone who didn't wear wealth like a badge on their sleeve. She watched as Craig spoke in hushed tones to the gate agent. They both looked in her direction, then back at the screen. The agent appeared confused. She shook her head. Craig returned, lips tight. There seems to be a technical error, he said. Your name is showing as Emma Caldwell, but the system has a different record for seat 1C. It says it belongs to a corporate VIP guest. We're going to have to move you to economy. Emma's stomach sank, not because of the downgrade, but because she could feel the humiliation rising around her. I am that VIP guest, she said firmly. I didn't use my husband's name when booking. The ticket is under my name. Caldwell is my maiden name. Tina stepped forward, her expression twisted with concern, but not empathy. I'm sorry, ma'am. We'll get you seated in economy and provide compensation for the mistake. No, Emma said quietly. I'm staying here. Craig's tone sharpened. Ma'am, if you won't cooperate, we'll have to call security. You're holding up boarding. Emma's voice didn't waver. I'm not the one causing the delay. At that moment, another flight attendant approached, whispering something to Tina. Tina paled. Emma watched the sudden shift in energy. Craig took a sharp breath. The whispers intensified. Someone from the cockpit had stepped out, a captain with gold stripes on his sleeve. He looked directly at Emma. Then he spoke one sentence that silenced the entire cabin. Ma'am, are you Mrs. Stoneworth? Emma looked up. Calm. Steady. Yes, I am. Craig visibly swallowed. Tina's eyes darted around the room. The captain nodded slightly, then turned toward them with forced diplomacy. My deepest apologies, Mrs. Stoneworth. There's been a misunderstanding. Emma rose from her seat, not to leave, but to stand. She turned to face the entire cabin. I purchased a first-class ticket, just like you did. The only difference between us is that I chose not to flaunt my wealth. I came here dressed for comfort, not approval. And I was judged for it. She paused. Her voice, though soft, cut through the silence like a blade. Do you know what that tells me? That appearances matter more than identity. That the uniform of wealth earns respect, while comfort invites suspicion. I wanted to see how this airline treats everyday people. People who don't wear their net worth on their sleeve. Now I know. She sat down. A beat passed. Then, from the back of the cabin, someone clapped. Then another. Then the elderly woman across the aisle gave Emma a warm nod. And Craig, Tina, they didn't say another word. They simply turned and walked away. What they didn't know, what they couldn't have imagined, was that in less than 24 hours, their faces, and this moment, would be replayed in a corporate conference room. Because Summit Airlines was no longer owned by a nameless group of shareholders. It was owned by Dominic Stoneworth. And this simple woman in the hoodie, she was about to change everything. Her name is on the owner's list. Summit Airlines headquarters, New York City. The sleek 42-story glass tower overlooked the skyline like a monument to luxury, status, and corporate confidence. But inside the boardroom on the 40th floor, something very different was happening. Something none of them were ready for. Patricia Lang, the senior vice president of customer experience, stood at the front of the room, gripping her printed agenda like a lifeline. Her voice was crisp, but her nerves were fraying. Today's emergency meeting, she began, was called following a notable incident on Flight 407. She glanced around the table. meeting the gazes of her department heads and regional managers. The air was thick. No one dared to move. They'd all seen the internal report that landed on their desks at 6 a.m., marked with one line in red at the top. Incident involving CEO's spouse, urgent. That was all it took to make phones ring, emails fly, and meetings clear. Because there was only one CEO now, Dominic Stoneworth, the enigmatic billionaire who bought Summit Airlines less than 8 months ago in an all-cash deal that sent shockwaves through the industry. His vision had been simple: revolutionize air travel by making service the real luxury. But most of the executive staff had treated that as a buzzword, something that looked good in press releases and training manuals. Until now. The boardroom doors opened suddenly. Everyone turned. Emma stepped in. She didn't wear a power suit or heels. She wore the same soft blue hoodie and joggers from the day before. Her hair was still tucked under a plain baseball cap. She carried no laptop, no notes, no entourage, just a quiet fire in her eyes. Behind her, Dominic entered, his stride measured, his expression unreadable. He didn't need to say anything. Everyone at the table immediately stood. "Please sit," he said calmly. The room obeyed. Patricia forced a smile. "Mr. Stoneworth, Mrs. Stoneworth, thank you for joining us on such short notice. I assure you we're taking the situation seriously." Emma took a seat directly across from her. "Good," she said simply. Patricia hesitated. "There are protocols in place, of course, for verifying tickets. First class has certain." Emma held up a hand, politely but firmly. "Let's not waste time. This isn't about protocol." Dominic leaned forward, his voice low but clear. "This is about culture." No one dared speak. Emma placed a folder on the table. Inside were 23 printed customer complaints filed over the past 90 days, all from passengers in first or business class, all telling a similar story. A teenage boy in a thrift store jacket asked to move to coach. A nurse in scrubs denied lounge access despite her platinum membership. An elderly woman asked for ID verification 3 times. A black woman in natural hair was told she might feel more comfortable in economy. The staff had logged them as misunderstandings, as noise, but Emma had gone through every one, highlighted patterns, and printed them in black and white. "Your team didn't see these as red flags," she said, her voice even. "But to people like me, they're alarm bells. They show us that how someone looks still determines how they're treated." Patricia's voice cracked. "Mrs. Stoneworth, if we had known." Emma stopped her. "That's the problem. You shouldn't have to know who someone is to treat them with basic dignity." Dominic finally spoke, his voice calm but sharp. "Do you know what Summit's slogan was when I bought this company?" Silence. He looked at Patricia. "We take you higher," she whispered. "No," Dominic said. "That's the tagline. The slogan was service you deserve. I chose that. Personally. I wanted it on every wall, every ad, every onboarding packet. Because that's what matters. Not the champagne, not the leather seats, not the meal options. It's the service." He let that sit. Emma flew commercial yesterday because she wanted to see what passengers really experience. She's done that 3 times in the past 6 months. Quietly. No special bookings. No VIP alerts. Just as herself. And what she found wasn't just bias. It was a pattern. Patricia looked like she might melt into her chair. We can retrain the staff involved. We can offer her an apology, a formal." "She doesn't want an apology," Dominic interrupted. "She wants change." Emma leaned forward. "I want to work with your customer experience team." Patricia blinked. "Work with?" "Yes," Emma replied. "Not as a figurehead. Not as someone filing reports. I want a seat in the department. Let me listen to customer calls. Let me shadow gate agents. Let me be in the room where those decisions are made." "You're volunteering," a manager said, baffled. "No," Emma said. "I'm investing." Dominic smiled faintly. She'll be running a new department, he added. Starting today. We're calling it Passenger Perspective. Half the room looked confused. The other half looked nervous. Emma explained. The goal is simple. Real-time oversight on frontline behavior. We're building a feedback system that puts human dignity before status. I want to know who's being overlooked, who's being questioned, who's being denied simply because of how they show up. She paused, then added, and yes, that includes the rich too. Rudeness works both ways. This isn't a class war. It's a respect revolution. The room was silent, tense, unsure how to react. Then, to everyone's shock, Patricia slowly nodded. I think that's brilliant, she said, and overdue. Dominic stood. Emma will have full access to flight data, crew training, complaint logs, and mystery passenger surveys. Her reports will come directly to me. One executive tried to speak up. Mr. Stoneworth, if I may, want this kind of visibility overwhelm our staff. Make them feel monitored. Dominic nodded. Yes, and they should be. Because we're not selling seats. We're selling service, and we cannot tolerate bias wrapped in policy. He looked at the room. Don't worry about being perfect. Worry about being honest. Emma will help guide that. Emma glanced around. This isn't about punishment. I don't want anyone fired. I want them to learn. But they can't do that if the system stays the same. Just then, the door opened. A nervous assistant stepped in, whispering something to Patricia. She nodded, looked up, and said, The crew from Flight 407 is waiting outside. Bring them in, Dominic said. The door opened again, and in walked 3 flight attendants, Craig, Tina, and a third from the back cabin who had nothing to do with the incident, but had filed a quiet complaint afterward, saying, I felt it was wrong, but didn't know what to say. Emma turned to them. Craig looked shell-shocked. Tina's lips trembled. The third, whose name tag read Zara, stood quietly behind them. Emma didn't raise her voice. She simply said, Tell me what you saw. Craig blinked. I thought you were in the wrong seat. I made assumptions. About what? Your clothes. Your bag. You didn't look like first class. And did you ask anyone else for ID? No, he admitted. Only you. Emma nodded slowly, then looked at Zara. You filed a complaint. Zara nodded. Yes. I didn't know who you were, but I knew what happened wasn't right. I stayed quiet, and that's on me. But I don't want to stay quiet anymore. Emma smiled gently. That's all I ask. Tina looked near tears. We didn't mean to be rude. We thought we were following protocol. You were following perception, Emma corrected gently. But now we shift that. Together. Dominic addressed the room one last time. This company isn't changing because of Emma. It's changing because people like Emma exist everywhere. In sweatpants, in uniforms, in wheelchairs, in hijabs, in worn-out jackets. And they all deserve to be seen. As Emma rose from her seat, the room instinctively stood with her. She didn't want praise or power. She wanted progress. And she was about to lead it, one passenger at a time. They treated her like a nobody. Now she's everyone's standard. 3 months later, JFK International Airport, Gate 91, 7:12 a.m. The sun had barely broken over the horizon, casting golden streaks through the high glass windows of Terminal 4. Passengers moved like shadows in early light, wheeling suitcases, sipping coffee, yawning, and scrolling through phones. But near Gate 91, something was different. There was a buzz, a subtle awareness that something special was about to happen. Emma Caldwell sat quietly at the edge of the waiting area, dressed, again, in her soft blue hoodie and joggers. The same outfit that sparked the storm. No makeup, no jewelry, no entourage. She sipped her coffee and watched the world pass by. This was her test flight. Her program, Passenger Perspective, had now been fully implemented. Every flight attendant in Summit Airlines had completed the new bias and service integrity training. A new system called Equalius flagged patterns of unfair treatment across passenger profiles. Real stories from customers were now shared in weekly team huddles. Emma's fingerprints were on every page of that transformation. But today wasn't about spreadsheets or boardrooms. Today, she would fly as a mystery passenger again. And she was curious to see if Summit Airlines had really changed. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Summit Flight 921 to San Francisco. We'll begin first-class boarding shortly. Emma stood and approached the counter. The gate agent, a young woman with short curls and an energetic smile, greeted her warmly. "Boarding pass, please." Emma handed over her phone. The agent scanned it, glanced down, then up. "Mrs. Caldwell," she said, her smile never wavering. "Welcome aboard. You're in 2A today. Let us know if you need anything." No raised eyebrows. No second glance at the hoodie. No double check. Emma nodded, slightly stunned, and deeply moved. She stepped onto the plane. Inside the first-class cabin, the leather seats gleamed and the warm lighting glowed. A new team of flight attendants was stationed up front. One of them turned and smiled at her. It was Zora, the one who had filed the complaint months ago, now proudly working first class. "Good morning," Zora said with confidence and warmth. "Welcome to Flight 921. May I take your bag?" Emma blinked. "Zora, you're here." Zora beamed. "I got promoted, and I trained the new hires under your program." Emma's heart swelled. As she took her seat, Zora offered a bottle of water and added quietly, "You changed my life, Mrs. Caldwell. And more than that, you changed this airline." Emma nodded with a grateful smile. Not alone. Over the intercom, the captain's voice came through. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard Flight 921. Today is a special flight. One of our passengers helped us rethink the meaning of premium service. So if things feel a little more thoughtful than usual, you can thank Mrs. Caldwell in 2A. The entire first-class cabin turned toward her. Some passengers clapped. Some nodded in appreciation. And no one stared at her clothes. No one questioned her worth. Across the aisle, a teenage girl in ripped jeans sat nervously beside her father, gripping a tablet. Her name tag read Student Design Dillionaire. She limed in ovation. She looked stunned. Emma gave her a soft smile. "You belong here," she said quietly. The girl nodded. The flight took off. As the plane reached cruising altitude, Zora returned with a small envelope. "Compliments of the CEO," she said. Emma opened it. Inside was a handwritten note. "Emma, I just flew commercial last week. Wore a hoodie. No one blinked. They didn't know I was the owner. They just knew I was a passenger. That's what we wanted. You did it. Love always. D." Emma leaned back, looking out the window as the clouds rolled beneath the aircraft. But her thoughts weren't on altitude. They were on altitude of a different kind. How far they'd come. From humiliation to hope. 2 weeks later, the Summit Airlines Annual Awards Gala, New York Hilton Grand Ballroom. The ballroom shimmered with navy and gold banners. The stage was flanked by screens showing smiling staff photos and highlights of the company's dramatic turnaround. Executives, pilots, attendants, and ground crew mingled in tuxedos and gowns. But the most anticipated moment of the evening hadn't yet arrived. When the MC announced, "This year's Humanity and Service Award goes to Emma Caldwell Stoneworth," the entire room stood. Emma walked to the stage in the same blue hoodie, and everyone cheered louder. "Some of you know me as a passenger," she began, her voice steady. "Some know me as the founder of the Passenger Perspective Program. And yes, some of you might know me as the wife of our CEO. But I'm not here because of my last name. I'm here because this company was brave enough to look at itself and say, we can do better." She paused. And you did. She looked at the crowd. To the gate agent who greeted me like any other traveler, to the crew who no longer judge by appearances, to the managers who listened, changed, and led. This victory belongs to you. Applause echoed through the room. Later, as the lights dimmed and the crowd dispersed, Emma walked out onto the balcony of the ballroom. The city lights sparkled below. Dominic joined her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "You ready to disappear from the spotlight again?" he asked with a smile. Emma laughed softly. "I never wanted the spotlight. I just wanted people to be treated right." Dominic looked at her, admiration clear in his eyes. "You're going to change more than this airline, Emma. You've already changed people." Emma sipped her drink, her voice quiet. "I just proved what anyone can do, even a woman in a hoodie." 3 months later, somewhere across the country, on board a different Summit flight, a young mother traveling alone with a baby approached the first-class cabin. Her hair was messy, her bags overflowing, and she looked utterly exhausted. The flight attendant, newly trained, stepped up and said warmly, "Mrs. Salazar, we're so glad you're here. First class is just ahead. Let me help with that bag." The woman's eyes filled with grateful tears, not because she was treated like royalty, but because she was treated like a person. And in a framed photo back at Summit headquarters, a snapshot of Emma Caldwell in her hoodie sits under a single line etched into glass. "Respect shouldn't be earned by appearance. It should be the starting point."